I know it can be a little tricky at the Dolphins and you feel a little down, but the Fins are up today. We got the Miami Dolphins at number 18 overall. What is cool? What's going on? I hope you're doing well. And let's get excited for this Miami Dolphins team. And I'll tell you right now, this is a football team that has explosiveness. They've got elite talent. At the same time, there's just a couple of big question marks. Can Tua stay healthy? No more concussions. Can this offensive line protect him in the mean potatoes? And that is what I'm going to stress the most about, and that's why they're number 18 and not higher on this list. If you tell me Tua stays healthy and they can protect him, I feel a lot better about this football team with this offensive line. I have the tackle ranking at 32nd in the NFL. Patrick Paul, his development is critical for this team. Austin Jackson's had some streakiness throughout his career, and he has gotten better, and it might be a little bit of a low ranking for him. I don't know. It is what it is. I'm not a huge fan. At the same time, he has improved. So I want to acknowledge that he's not the worst tackle in the NFL, and he is protecting to his blind side. So that's why I'm also being a little bit picky when it comes to Austin Jackson here. He's really got to step it up this season with Terron Armstead now retired and everything like that. He's got to be this team's number one tackle. Patrick Paul, like I mentioned, he's got to develop. He's got the size. He's got the athleticism. He needs to put it together with his hand technique and his footwork, man. That's really got to come together this season for Patrick Paul. Keon Smith, to me, is going to be their main swing tackle. Maybe Larry Borum ends up being their main swing tackle. Just ask the Bears, though. There's some trickiness there. And he also has the versatility where maybe even moves inside and plays guard a little bit for them. I would suspect those four guys end up making the roster, and then we're gonna have a competition between Hayes. Mato's gonna make it for the international purposes. Daniels, etc., are gonna be competing if they do decide to keep five tackles, which I imagine they would with the amount of injuries and stuff like that. And then interior wise, I feel a little bit better about this interior. You got James Daniels coming off a major injury, so that will be something. How does he come along right away? However, Aaron Brewer, really, really good last season, great scheme fit for Mike McDaniel. You got Jonas Savanaia, second round selection. And I think he's going to fit right in there. And he could be an emergency swing tackle for them as well. So he looks really good at air. I loved him a lot at Arizona, and I think he's going to be a day one starter for this football team. And at least they got some good interior depth with Daniel Brunskill, who they picked up. Remember, Lee Eichenberg said that he's going to be out for a few weeks. So I thought that was a really good pickup. Why not, right? Brunskill is a guy where it's like if you needed him to come in a pinch, he can do it. He can fill in that role and be a solid starter. He could even move inside and play center for this team if they have an injury with Aaron Brewer. Jackson Carman, he's going to be fighting for a roster position. And it's going to depend. Do they want to keep Addison West or Andrew Meyer? Those are two guys to watch out for to make the cut. So between Carman, Mayer, and West, I'm going to say one roster spot is up for grabs, maybe two between those guys, depending if they keep nine guys on this offensive line or 10. So, yeah, we'll see how the numbers will work out there. But the offensive line, the tackle position especially, is going to be the key question whether they can protect Tua Tagovailoa long enough to let his weapons get down the field, make more plays. And when we get into the weapons, there's no doubt this, yes, it's a little bit of a small step back from last year, you could say. I think they're going to have a major bounce back. I think they'll be a top five unit more than likely by the season end. It's who's going to be that number three guy consistently. I think Nick Whisper-Kakine is going to certainly step up. He's another deep threat for this football team. He's just a bigger body deep threat. He's very, very dangerous on the boundary and can play in the slot too. So somebody that why not add another vertical threat, but with some size in this case scenario? And it's exactly what they're going to want to do here in Miami. You got Malik Washington, Taj Washington. And then for me, who's going to make the roster? Because I think Malik Washington has a locked in spot. Then you look at guys like Eric Ezukama, Dwayne Eskridge, Theo Weiss, Taj Washington, Andrew Armstead. I think all of those guys are really going to be competing for about two positions. And if it were me personally, I like Andrew Armstrong a lot. I also thought Theo Weiss was really good at Missouri last year. I like Taj Washington. I would say one of those three guys, or like two of those three guys, is who I would personally pick. But that's just me. We'll see what they end up doing. Ultimately, I would imagine that you keep around six wide receivers going into the season. And we go into the tight end room. I'm guessing they keep three guys here. Maybe they keep four. Obviously, Waller, after picking him up and letting go of John Smith, that Waller is going to be their day one starter. You got Julian Hill, maybe the favorite to make the roster. But for me personally, I don't know. I look at Tanner Connor, maybe a little more upside with Jalen Conyers as well. Those two guys, I think they're going to be competing for a roster spot. Pharaoh Brown, if I had to guess, would probably be the locked in starter here. Mainly because or sorry, a locked in backup because of his blocking ability. So if they want to keep that veteran blocker, then I feel like Pharaoh Brown would be the guy to keep here. Overall, we'll see between Hill, Connor, and Conyers. Maybe they only keep one of those guys. Maybe they keep two if they want to keep four tight ends. overall, Waller gives this room. I still think there's some juice left in the tank with Waller, and I'm excited. Hey, coming out of retirement, he should be fresh, should be healthy, and ready to go, and certainly can provide a spark for this football team. And hey, when you got Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and Nick Westbrook-Akine out there, it takes a little bit of coverage, as we saw from Johnny Smith, and getting open looks. So Waller should have a good season, barring injuries and whatnot. I rank at 26. I'm not super worried about the tight end room. It's not an elite room, but it's solid. Running back wise, it's a really good room, and it starts with Devin Achan. And Achan is, one of the most dynamic running backs in the NFL. The question marks with durability, of course, for Achan are going to continue. However, when he's out on the football field, he's unbelievable. Jalen Wright has a big season ahead of him. I think he's a guy to watch out for as a potential breakout, especially obviously if Achan goes down. I think Wright can fill in. So I'm not like worried about this running back room. I think they got a 1-2 punch that's going to be really, really good, even despite losing Raheem Mostert. Alexander Madison, Ollie Gordon, if they only want to keep three running backs and a fullback, I'm expecting they keep Alec Ingold. So if they say to themselves, look, we're only going to keep three running backs and a fullback, then I would guess that Madison ends up getting cut. Ultimately, they're going to keep Gordon because he's, a lot of potential there, draft pick. I'd be shocked if they moved him to the practice squad because he'd be picked up on waivers. Madison's a guy, though, that could be on the way out if they decide to only keep three running backs. If they want to keep that vet in the room, though, that would make sense to keep Madison. So ultimately, I think they keep four running backs and the fullback. It comes down to what do they want to do, if they want to keep more linebackers or defensive interior guys, etc. And we'll get into that in a minute. Running back room, though, looks really, really good. 12th, Achan's going to lead this team. And obviously, if you're in your fantasy purposes and whatnot, Achan and Wright would be a great backup to have too. But I think both of those guys are going to be really, really good. Tua Tagovailoa, where to begin, right? And it really just comes down to if he stays healthy, I would say he's a top 15 quarterback. But when you look at the rankings and stuff like that, I put him at 18 just because of, simply put, like, staying on the field is really, really tough. And I hate to grade someone off of that. It really seems kind of terrible, but at the same time, it is important. Availability is huge. Tua is a super talented quarterback. And at moments, you wonder, can he excel? Can he take that next leap? Can he be an elite quarterback? Those are questions we still have with Tua Tagovailoa. But there's no doubt in my mind, like, in terms of his processing and reading the field and getting the ball out on time, he is excellent at that. His accuracy, like, absolutely, man. So Tua, hoping it stays healthy. I know he's a super tough worker as well. Rooting for him, and we'll see what he can do. Zach Wilson figures to be the main team's backup. Obviously, as a Jets fan, that is what it is here. And then you got Quinn Ewers. I'm guessing they keep Quinn Ewers as the third quarterback, maybe because of the injuries and stuff. They're going to probably try to field three quarterbacks. So I imagine Quinn Ewers ends up making the roster here. Moving on to the defense side of the ball now. And the defensive line, I feel really good about this defensive line, at least going into the future. Like, when you project this defensive line for the next, let's say, 5 years, they've got some really, really promising young talent on this core. So while the rankings right now might be a little bit low, little barren, you're saying, like, ooh, 14th for the edge and 21st for the interior defensive line. As much as we've invested first round picks into this, you got to be kidding me, G Sling. Talking about myself in the third person. Jeez Louise. Here we go again. But no, getting back to this here, and you look at the edge room between Jalen Phillips, Bradley Chubb, Chop Robinson, those will be your three guys. If those guys stay healthy, and that's been the big what if, and that's why I lower my ranking just a little bit because of the health concerns. Getting those guys on the field is going to be tantalizing that's a big word, for offensive lines and opposing offensive tackles to have to deal with. And I personally, I'd move Bradley Chubb or Jalen Phillips. And Phillips was really good too in college at UCLA, working on inside versus guards. So move those guys on the inside and have Chop Robinson and either Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips, one of those guys on the interior and then the other on the edge. And you have yourself three edge rushers on those NASCAR packages. That could be really, really fun to see. And you got Quentin Bell. I think he ends up making the roster. And also, I think Mohamed Kamara ends up making the roster. So those five guys, if I had to guess, end up making the roster. On the interior wise, also looks really good. It just comes down to, some young talent out here. Kenny Grant. You got Jordan Phillips in there now. Both of those guys really, really think are going to help them out. Zeke Biggers. And Biggers is a guy to really keep an eye out on it because I do suspect they would try to keep him. Now, he's a practice squad candidate for sure. Benito Jones, right? Would they consider moving on from Benito Jones, keeping Zeke Biggers as that nose tackles that big role, right? The pun's got to be thrown out there any which way. Like Benito Jones, Zeke Biggers, those guys are going to be like those true like nose tackles on for this defensive line. Don't get me wrong, Kenneth Grant can play anywhere on the defensive line. But if I had to guess right now, like the base formations, you would have Benito Jones, a nose tackle. You'd have Kenny Grant and Zach Seiler on your defensive end spots. And speaking of Seiler, obviously he's really good. You could make arguments he's an underrated football player in the NFL. Phillips could play a little nose. He could play a little three tech. Like Phillips, very versatile. It's just like Kenny Graham. They have definitely made physicality a presence for this offseason. And I like that. Like that is a step in the right direction. So I'm really, really happy Greer and McDaniel took that approach because it was a big deal for me. And personally, I do think they've gotten a lot bigger, a lot more physical up in these trenches. Matt Dickerson could all I think he ends up making the roster too, if I had to guess. But we're gonna have to make some, tough decisions between Matthew Butler, Zeke Biggers, Matt Dickerson, those three guys, Ben Still. So yeah, we see out of those four guys, maybe only one of those roster spots is up for granted. So yeah, that's gonna be something we have to really keep an eye on who ends up making the roster. Overall, the defensive line looks really promising. It just comes down to some of that young talent developing and whatnot. Linebacker, I rank it 21st. This is a linebacking core that'll get the job done. I don't think it's an elite linebacking core, but ultimately they'll be fine and they'll be able to do a decent job here for Anthony Weaver and this defense. Jordan Brooks, Tyrell Dotson. Brooks, good solid linebacker, has ability to play in coverage and it's an all-around three down guy. Tyrell Dotson, solid in run defense. You got KJ Britt, Willie Gay. Here's the thing, though. I will say with Willie Gay, he's going to be competing with Asante and Tyndall and Jackson for a roster spot. So don't be shocked if they kept one of those guys above Gay or Britt or whatever. Like those guys are not locked into those backup roles. I do think that they're gonna have some serious competition behind those dudes. I'm guessing they keep 4 linebackers in here. They could keep 5 though. 4 would be my guess. And then moving on to the cornerback position, which this is probably my second biggest concern on the roster. It's neck and neck with the tackle position, but I feel like the tackle position I would more than likely put at number 1 and this cornerback position at number 2, which I rank at 32nd in the NFL. There are big question marks with the cornerback position, especially on the outside. Who is going to step up? You got Jack Jones coming in here. You got Storm Duck, who played decent at the end of the season last year. I think he's a favorite to be the starter or one of the starters on the outside. You got Cam Smith. Like they've been looking for him to step up, and there've been some questions on and off the field. You got Jason Marshall Jr., who I like coming out of Florida. I thought he was a good day 3 pick. Is he ready to be a starter? Great question. I don't know. And you got like guys like Ethan Bonner, who's definitely got some upside there, or Isaiah Johnson with his size and athleticism has a ton of upside, or BJ Adams. Those are guys who are going to be competing for roster spots. And I wouldn't be shocked if any one of those 3 guys steps up and be a little bit of a surprising cornerback for this football team. Like there's ultimately a lot of guys that I could see penciled in as starters for this football team. And I do think they end up keeping around 7 corners going into the season. Now, I'm actually okay with the fact that they got Mike Hilton in there at the slot, even though unfortunately they have more injuries already with Kader Coho and Artie Burns both done for the season. Coho just had an ACL injury. I think Burns also had a knee injury. So that really sucks. That makes Sheffield more than likely able to make the roster as a backup slot for this football team, is my guess. So there's that slot position. Mike Hilton's still a really solid player. Yeah, he's getting a little bit older now. I think he'll be able to fill right in and be at least a decent player for this football team. He's a scrappy nose guy and plays tough, tougher than what you would expect for a guy his size too. It just comes down to how is this outside cornerback position going to look? So can Jack Jones, Stormed Out, can they find something here and be decent? Or Jason Marshall, Cam Smith, Ethan Bonner, Isaiah Johnson, etc. As I was talking about, like they're going to need somebody to step up here. They're going to need some development. That is really a big concern is this secondary. And continuing with the theme of the secondary, now the safety position, nowhere near as concerned now. Now that they've got Mika Fitzpatrick coming back to Miami, he looks good back in those Finn uniforms. I think they're going to work out a contract extension too this time. Now, with Minka, he is coming off a rough year. I expect him to be way better this season. And if he is, then you got a Fedi Melifanu compared with guys like Ashton Davis. You got Elijah Campbell, the veteran with good special teams ability. Now, don't be shocked if like guys like Patrick McMorris or Dante Trader end up beating him out for a roster spot because those are, maybe just figure out let's go with one more youth and one of those guys can play special teams too. I imagine Ashton Davis works in as their primary number 3 safety. And I love Ifeadi Melifonwu. If over at Detroit, he was really good. It's the problem of the injuries with him. He has been injured throughout his career consistently. So if he stays healthy with Minka Fitzpatrick, this safety room actually could be a top 15 unit. It just is a big variable at this moment. And Minka Fitzpatrick having a bounce back year, I think that's a little bit less of a variable. I do think he'll have a bounce back year. So we'll see how the safety room looks, but I'm not like super worried about the safety room. I think it's the cornerback room that I'm really concerned about. Those defensive linemen, let's get after the quarterback. They're going to need help in the secondary. And then on to the coaching staff here, which I rank at 19, so a little below average in the NFL. However, I still really like Mike McDaniel. I do. It just comes down to this season. I want to see some more discipline from this football team. And of course, like the injuries were key, and sometimes it's just out of your control. at the same time, we can't make excuses all the time. We see really good coaches, they fight through those things. Okay. The best coaches, they fight through injuries no matter what. So I want to see Mike McDaniel step it up in this overall coaching staff, not just Mike McDaniel, Frank Smith, Anthony Weaver. Those guys have got to do better on this side of the football field. So that's why my ranking is number 19. I think they are definitely a prime candidate to bounce back. They're on the hot seat. I mean, Mike McDaniel this year is definitely going to be there's a little fire under that seat. Hope he doesn't get fired, but if things go bad, which they could, then that's going to be a big question for Mike McDaniel here in this overall coaching staff. So I'm in the middle with this one. I think it could go either way. For the record prediction, I have the Miami Dolphins going 8-9. And this is one where I just think that it's a team that has just a few too many deficiencies. However, their schedule I do think is relatively favorable, and I think they have a good chance to win and be a 500 football team, especially if they stay somewhat healthy. Then they could be a better football team. Their division's not too tricky, at least at the moment, with the Jets and the Patriots. Of course, you got the Bills, so you got those teams twice a year. I think that they can match up favorably against most of those teams. Maybe they can steal one versus the Bills. So the Dolphins are still a team that I think is definitely a playoff contender. But once again, that tackle situation, the cornerbacks, the secondary, those huge question marks to us staying healthy are why I have them going 8-9. So that is where it is right now. Let me know what you think, though. Miami Dolphins fans, agree or disagree. And hope you guys have a fins up day and keep it cool. And I'll talk to you soon.